So the real question is not really, is it karmic? The real question is, am I resolving this? Welcome. If you are here, you are probably familiar with the sentence, that was karmic, I learned my lesson. But then months later, you find yourself in a very similar situation, but with a slightly different face. And if that happened to you, I get it, because it has happened to me as well. And today I want to challenge you on something, because what if it repeated because you didn't learn the lesson, but you labeled the lesson? Or maybe you have learned how to better describe the lesson before really learning how to change it. And today in this video, I want to show you how to see the exact difference between those two. And I want to share a method with you that has worked wonders for me, that really helps you to shift it and not only to name it, and by then transforming it. Most of what I know about karma, I have learned through my own lived experience and through seeing how that has been playing out in my own birth chart. And if you are new here, my name is Anke. I'm an astrologer, I read the Akashic Records, and I work with light language. And I have Saturn, the planet of karma, in my 7th house of relationships and partnerships, collaborations. It's actually relationships and partnerships in the largest sense of the word. And that specific area of my life is where the hardest, but also the most evolutionary lessons show up for me. So everything that I'm about to share today, I first really had to face it myself before I could even recognize it into someone else's chart. And then after, I also started to see these patterns in other people's charts and reading their Akashic records. And here's why that matters. It is very important to go beyond only naming our karmic work, because at times we use spiritual language that gives us a feeling of closure before our emotional body has truly had the chance to process it. So what that looks like is that we use the words of being healed, like I'm okay, that was karmic, I am protecting my energy, that is no longer aligned for me. So we use that spiritual language, we reinstate that in our mind, but we do so before we had the chance to actually feel it in our bodies, before our emotional body truly had the chance to process it. And that sounds then like growth, and it can sometimes even feel like growth, but when that feeling is not giving us peace, it means in a way that it is not completed. It's not really living inside of our body. So now imagine that someone ends things with you and you say, oh, that was karmic, I'm okay. And in that moment in your mind, you are okay with that. But then 6 months later, or a year, someone else shows up. And that someone else gives you the exact same feeling in your body. And you are wondering, like, I already healed this. I went already through this. So why is it showing up again? So that is then a sign of your body that you have spoken the words, but you have not allowed the feeling to truly integrate. You have not allowed to really live it. And maybe you have felt that before, that a phrase that made you feel healed, but before you were really ready for it. And only when we really do the work, it's when it will land different in our body. So the real question is not really, is it karmic? Because so much relational happenings are karmic. The real question is, am I resolving this? Am I really moving beyond this? Or am I just getting really good at describing the pattern? Because the first is being done in our emotional body, and the second is done in our mind. And there's really a difference of how that lands within the body and how that shows up karmically. And so today we are really going to focus on the difference and then how to resolve it. And I want to start with what karma then is. Because karma is not temporarily people that hurt you for a reason or that hurt you in order to learn a lesson. There is much more to it, because in a way karma is consciousness in movement that has not had the opportunity to be really lived. So that bridge in between, that gap, is then the opportunity of living the experience and truly stepping into that karmic lesson. because that gap in between is what your soul came for. It is what your soul wants to live. It is what your soul wants to feel and to experience. And through that experience, it has the opportunity to evolve. And until it has the full experience of what your soul ultimately wants to learn, it will just keep repeating. It will keep showing up in the same patterns, like a loop. The karmic lesson is not just to be understood, it is to be fully lived and embodied. And at the same time, I do want to mention that karma is not the wound. Karma is, how I see it, karma is the bridge. And over that bridge, different things can show up. Some show up in a wound. Sometimes it shows up in the form of a gift or a talent. It doesn't necessarily have to be what we categorize as negative. It shows up in that duality. So in a way, it doesn't know that separation, and it can show up either way. When we look at karma within literature, it shows up as taking action, as cause and result. And that is very true. And what I want to add to that is the experience, how you stand within that. So not as someone that is just receiving the lesson as if it is done to you, but no, as the one that is creating the outcome, that is creating the next effect, so to speak. Because that is the part where our actions create that. We decide. We are the co-creator. And like I said, most of what I've learned is through my Saturn, the Lord of Karma, in my 7th house, in the house of relationships. So my view on this is very relational. And as humans, we are really relational beings. We evolve through relations, through connections, through love. And we see that from the very first moment that we are born. So imagine when a baby is born, the first connection it has is with her or his mother. And the nervous system of that baby is being completely regulated through the mother. And the first sound of love that the baby is hearing is the voice of the mother, is the heartbeat of the mother. The baby is so intertwined to anything that his or her mother does. It's so connected through the relational consciousness is so connected through love. And that really shows that from the very first moment that we come in is that we are growing literally through that nurturing conscious love. And I have said this before, there have been devastating researches where babies in the first weeks of their lives did not receive any of that. They didn't receive any love or nurturing or affection. They only received food and shelter, but nothing of that relational consciousness. And some of them did not survive. That shows how important that relational consciousness truly is. From the very first moment, human consciousness is designed to know itself through connection, to know itself through love. And like in a way, we were never meant to be separate. That is what society has been teaching us, but that is not necessarily our nature. And sometimes I feel that we have confused our healing journey with independence. We are supposed to really stay our authentic self while being in connection with someone else. Like how I love to say it is, I am you and you are me, while I remain me and you remain you. Because, and that to me says it all, like our consciousness is one field. And now imagine that you are standing in the middle of an ocean, and while you are watching the waves for a second are separate, but then they come back to the whole. And that is exactly how it is for us as humans as well. We are so interconnected while we are having our own experiences. And then really bringing this back to our karmic lessons, like the bridge in between. That space in between gets activated when we meet someone else. When two people genuinely meet each other, and with that I mean see the other person for their full self, for their authentic self, for their higher self, so to speak. When that happens, truly being seen by the other is when we remember out, that we remember for a second that we are not just the wave, we are the ocean. And that's also what I meant, that the karmic lessons, yes, they can be experienced as negative. Yes, they can also really be experienced as positive. And that's also why when I hear the sentence, "You broke my heart," I also read that as "You broke my heart right open." And that is not because the pain is beautiful. It opened the awareness of the gap. It opened the opportunity for something to be conscious that really had no other chance to become conscious. And once it is conscious, we can work with it. We can actually resolve it. And that is why sometimes that pain of really breaking open is actually something that we then alchemize into a gift, into something that we evolve from. It's really that opportunity to go over that bridge that I mentioned before. So now a question for you. Can you think of someone that when you first met, you instantly knew them, you recognized them, you instantly had this feeling, you had a feeling of being home, even though you just met them? Because that is often a sign of that there was a karmic connection there. And what I do not want to forget to mention is that we also have karmic bypassing. And that is really connecting it back to the beginning, where I said that sometimes we use the words without really having lived it. So in a way, we are misusing some words. Like, for example, like, "I'm just protecting my energy. It is not aligned anymore. It was karmic. I learned my lesson." And yes, sometimes that is very true. Sometimes the most conscious choice that we have is to simply walk away, to end things, to no longer interact with whatever we are ending. And other times, it is actually using language to bypass really doing the work. What I mean with that is that we are not really changing the loop. We are using the words. We are naming the pattern, and sometimes awareness can really feel like healing, but we are not fully embodying it yet. And so we are taking on the invitation, but then the transformation part comes. So here is what that can look like. Two people meet, person A and person B, and instantly they have this extreme pull towards each other. They are connected from the very first moment, but as they continue to see each other, at one point person A starts pulling away, and wound gets activated and they disappear, and person B feels that distance, and a wound of rejection starts to feel in. And so they start to spiral, like, what did I do wrong? What happened? So both have done a wound activated. And what happens is that person B then starts to reach out because he or she wants to know what went wrong. But person A feels that as more pressure and feels that almost as a validation of pulling away in the first place. So both really are behaving and acting from the wound in that moment. And the thing is that neither of them is wrong. Both are just having that wound activated. So it's activated, but it's not resolved. The loop is active. Most people think that we resolve karma with being aware of it. And that is definitely part of it, but that is not completing it. And that's why I feel like this method that has 3 steps is really making a difference of truly doing the karmic work, doing our soul work. So step 1 is to have awareness, to recognize the loop. So anytime that you are about to say, that was just karmic, I am protecting my energy, it is no longer aligned, then really tune in with yourself and ask, am I only naming it, or am I really feeling this? Is this really integrated within me? And then step 2 is to really locate and recognize what is beneath the story, not what someone else did, but what actually happened within you. What got activated in you? Was it abandonment or rejection or scarcity? It can show up in so many different ways, and you can really tune in to find out what it is for you specifically. And if we look at the example that I gave, what got activated for person A was a wound of intimacy, of really being vulnerable and intimate with someone. And for person B, it was actually a wound of rejection or abandonment. And then after that comes number 3. And I feel that's something that often gets missed. And that is to make a different choice. To make a different choice in that moment, not after it has been done. In that moment, you choose different. For the person with the rejection wound, that would mean to stay connected with yourself instead of overreaching out. And for the person with the intimacy wound, that would look like communicating, being vulnerable instead of disappearing. So really small steps that you can take is that when you recognize these patterns and these loops, is that and you are about to behave the same way, is to really tune in within your own body what you feel, and that creates that urge to behave from that loop. And then give yourself the possibility and the opportunity to make a different choice. So what happens is that, yes, we will still have the same situations appearing, but the choice is different. And by creating a different choice, there will be another outcome. And that is how I see it, is that loop then gets broken and we have the opportunity to step in a spiral. And what we see with a spiral is that, yes, we keep having the same situations, but our experiences of it is so very different because we have created because of a different choice. And that creates a different way of seeing it, a different awareness. And that is how we resolve our karma. So for upcoming week, I would like to ask you to really tune in with yourself and to ask yourself, where in my life, what area of my life, am I still repeating the loop where I am really ready to step into that spiral? And if you are curious why some karmic connections originate beyond this lifetime, I have a video all about soul memory that goes into that, and I will link it below. And if you are in a phase of your life where you could use support, breaking the loops, where you see some karmic contracts active, there are two ways that I could help you with. One is that I have created a soul contract calculator. I will link that below as well, where based on your birth information, you can have a glimpse into your own soul contracts. And then the other way is in a personal setting, a one-to-one via my Akashic Records reading, astrology readings. We really dive deep into these topics. And I will link that below as well. If this video helped you in any way, it would help me out so much if you could leave a comment below with what you have experienced and what showed up for you during this video, because that helps me out a lot to know what to dive in my upcoming videos. And next week I will go into the different soul contracts that I see coming up in reading astrology charts and reading the Akashic Records. So that is next week. For now, I'm sending you much love. Bye for now.